Hello, everyone. I just came back because, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My other video got deleted. I don't know how that happened. So this is important because I want this on the record. If something ever happens to me, I want to make sure that I had said all these things to all of you before. So I'm going to wait for a couple of more people because this is really outrageous. Something really outrageous is happening on the watches of the American people. And I want to make sure that I'm on the record letting everybody know how outrageous what's happening is, and that we all need to have an honest conversation right now. And I want people to help me out. I want you to explain to me what else maybe I'm not a good organizer. Maybe I'm not as good as an activist as I thought I was. And that what can I do to help to get people to be more engaged and active in this moment? There was a tax bill that many of you have probably seen stuff about it online, have watched some trending topics on social media, on Twitter. People are calling it the GOP tax scam. It's a tax bill that basically was shoved down the throats of the American people literally at 1 o'clock in the morning. And this Senate tax bill is absolutely outrageous. Like, I don't know what I have to tell you to let you understand how outrageous it actually is. So it literally creates an additional 13 million uninsured people. So there are 13 million of your fellow Americans. It might even be you, could be your family, your partner, your sister, somebody that you love, who is going to be without any access to health care. It also defunds public schools. And you might say to me, well, what do you mean by that, Linda? So in the past, the way that it worked was that your taxes that you paid through the city and state, you probably saw those deductions on your paychecks, were not taxed by the federal government. So whatever taxes you paid through the city and the state, they would go to funding our public school systems. So the federal government now wants to tax your city and state taxes. What they also want to do is they want to give tax breaks for private schools. So let's get together on this. I'm not even hating on people who send their kids to private school. That's your personal prerogative, and if you want to do that, that's cool with me. The richer you are, the more money you make, right? The more the government will subsidize your children's private tuition. I don't know in what galaxy that makes sense, but apparently it makes sense in the United States of America. If folks remember CHIP was basically a child health care program that provided millions of children in this country who lived under the federal poverty line, basically poor children, regardless of their immigration status, access to public health insurance, right? Ensuring that our children had preventative services, that they had access to dental services and checkups and, hospital care, because no child in our country, regardless of who they are, should ever be in a situation where they were not able to seek any medical care. CHIP, done. Millions of children in our country are going to be without health care. So I want you to know that this is what happens, right? This is what happened on the watches of the American people. I don't know if people remember, but a couple of years ago, there was a proposal, maybe it was more than a couple of years ago. There was a proposal for universal pre-K. So universal pre-K, pre-kindergarten education for all 3-year-olds in America, basically. And also the proposal included free community college. This crazy idea, apparently, that everybody in our country deserves higher access to higher education. It would have cost us $130 billion. So you may be saying, Linda, $130 billion is a lot of money that we don't have right now. So I can understand why people might be against something like that for $130 billion. But this particular tax bill, the Republicans didn't want to have $130 billion for universal pre-K and free community college for everybody, but apparently they were cool with giving away $1.4 trillion to rich people and wealthy people in America. I mean, it's to the point where the bill even says things like people with private jets get tax breaks. How many people in America have private jets? Let's be serious here. It also increases taxes on those with student loans. it's enough that most young people in our country, not only do they graduate, many of them with graduate degrees, and can't even find a job, but then they're in debt, tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And now they're going to even have increased taxes on those loans. Like, it's the most outrageous thing. There will be $25 billion in cuts to Medicare. Who gets Medicare? People with disabilities, seniors, right? So basically, we're telling people with disabilities, we don't care about you. We're telling our seniors, we don't care about you. So there may be seniors amongst us who may not have enough money to supplement a prescription, or may not be able to pay fully for some treatment that they desperately need. And many of them, as you know, live on fixed incomes. So the Republicans are basically giving the middle finger to our senior population and people with disabilities. There will also be a 5 million people cut to Medicaid enrollment. So 5 million people will not be able to enroll in Medicaid. People are already paying a lot of money for the Affordable Care Act, and of course not as much as if they were buying it directly from private companies, but still relatively expensive. And they're going to raise the premiums for the Affordable Care Act, right? So that's happening. There's also not many incentives and tax breaks for small businesses, right? That's the bread and butter of our country. We should be supporting small businesses. Whatever happened to bring our jobs back, you know, and there's no incentives for small businesses here to thrive in this country. Now, I already said this earlier, 13 million people are an additional 13 million people will be uninsured in our country. So imagine that there are people amongst us, could be your neighbors, your family members, people that you love, who will not be able to get medical coverage, who will not be able to have access to any type of health care, whether it be preventative or treatments or hospitalization. Like, that's just what it is. I mean, eventually there might be, you know, it's really outrageous. Like, I've been watching people for years, I mean, in recent years, crowdfunding cancer treatment or crowdfunding for surgeries. Like, we should not be in the United States of America where people are using crowdfunding sites just so that they can fund their treatments. And oftentimes, many of them don't even make it to their goal, which means that they probably didn't have the surgery and they're probably going to die on our watch. So in the way that bills pass, the way that they're supposed to work, but of course the Republicans don't follow the rules because that's just how they work. There should be some hearings, some public commentary, some time for the Democrats and others to read the bill maybe. So they dropped them a 479-page, literally, it was this thick, and gave it to them a couple of hours and said, hey, we're going to vote on this bill tonight. Who could read 500 pages of a legislative bill and be able to make a decision, not be given the opportunity to make amendments or to say that there are certain parts maybe they agreed with, maybe they didn't. And then on top of that, if you look at some of the social media posts from the members of the Senate, on the margins, they were like making edits in the margin and chicken scratch. Like, I couldn't even read half the things that they were writing. So literally imagine this is a professional. These are the people that run our government. They're representing us. They're supposed to do what's best in the best interest of the American people. And they basically voted on a bill at 1 o'clock in the morning while everybody was sleeping. And they thought that we were all, I wasn't, distracted by Michael Flynn, who basically apparently is going to be, cooperating with the FBI against, not the FBI, but with Mueller, the prosecutor, against Donald Trump. Y'all could be happy about that. I think it's fine. You know, whatever, it's great. Everyone's like, but Linda, he's going to get impeached. Okay, great. Congratulations. But guess what? There's still going to be a tax bill even if Donald Trump gets impeached. So these 13 million people I'm talking about, the 5 million that won't have Medicaid, the children that just got kicked off of CHIP, like none of that is going to matter if Donald Trump gets impeached, right? We just watched I was watching yesterday in Arkansas, a bill just passed to close the only 2 Planned Parenthood offices in that whole state. So I don't know, people. Like, you explain to me what else we have to do, or what else can I do to encourage you to give more information? Like, what else do people need so that you can all do what we're asking you to do? Making a call takes 2 minutes of your life. Imagine your 2-minute call to your member of Congress could actually save somebody's life. Like, seriously, it can't. Now, people are saying, but Linda, why are you telling us this now? Because now it seems like it's a done deal. Overall, it's a pretty long shot. but we still do have an opportunity. The Senate bill has to be reconciled with the House bill. And there may be some opportunities for negotiation. But the most important thing is that the Republicans gotta feel the most backlash that they have ever felt and understand that this vote that they did has big consequences and that we as the American people are going to follow through in 2018. Every single Republican that put their vote on this tax bill has to be worried about getting reelected in 2018. That's like no questions asked. You want to march? Marching is awesome. I'm going to keep marching. I'm going to keep doing whatever. I'll do sit-ins. I'm going to on Tuesday, I'm going with folks to DC. We're all going to keep doing that. But you as a constituent have the responsibility to protect your fellow Americans. We need people, like, for example, if I'm saying, whatever I'm saying in this video, if it seems clear to you that this bill is hurtful to the American people, it's hurtful to the middle class, to the working class, to seniors, to children, to people with disabilities, people with HIV/AIDS, if that is enough for you to be outraged, talk to your partner, talk to your sister, talk to your neighbor, call up your colleagues and say, did you know? Not only is it hurtful to individuals and again to seniors and children and working class, and believe it or not, for those of us in the nonprofit world, it's going to be hurtful to those of us who are in the nonprofit world. And let me tell you why. The way that we fill out our taxes, we itemize, right? We like put line items for the different deductions that we want to use. And one of those line items is charitable donations. And if this tax bill removes all of those deductions, people are going to be less likely to give charitable donations if it doesn't have its own line item, right? So it's not that people won't give, and hopefully people who are committed to your work are going to continue to give you, but people who study nonprofit philanthropy have said that this bill could decrease annual giving by $13 billion, literally $13 billion. So imagine this bill is hurting all these people, access to health care. Eventually we could see cuts to welfare and Social Security and others. So more people are going to need more help. And the nonprofits who are going to supplement that help are potentially going to see a decrease in $13 billion of annual giving. So we're being screwed on so many levels, and I don't understand why more people aren't outraged. I don't understand why more people aren't in the streets. I don't understand why more people are not making calls. I will say this because I like to give credit to where it's due. I want to give credit to the people who've been arrested in civil disobedience and members of the Senate's offices. I want to thank every single human being who picked up that phone and called their senators. I want to thank every single person that sent an email, whatever you did, sent a fax, those that were continuously tweeting and commenting on the pages of those who represent them. Because there were people that were doing something. We were able to stop the repeal of healthcare, but then they sneaked in the repeal of healthcare pretty much into this budget bill, into this tax bill that literally passed under our noses while most of us were sleeping, unfortunately. 6,000 DC lobbyists worked on this bill. And so more lobbyists got to read and see the bill than actual members of Congress and the Senate who are actually the ones that are going to vote on it. I'm pretty sure that most of the Democrats were not able to finish reading and analyzing this bill by the time it went up for a vote. So in the past, there would be hearings, a million hearings about this. The last time there was a bill like this that got shoved down our throat or was all in the middle of the night while we were all sleeping like on a Friday night was the Patriot Act, which was a disaster and still is a disaster. And here we are with a bill that was shady, a scam, scandalous, and really hurtful to the American people. And I don't want to hear anybody tell me about how the Republican Party is the party of American values, conservative values. I don't know what values. Apparently a fetus that is not born in the body of a woman is more important than a child who's alive that deserves health care that could die, or a senior, or a person who's actually walking amongst us, and deserves to live and deserves to be healthy and deserves to have access to health care. I don't understand. And how seniors, many of whom, and people with disabilities who live on fixed incomes, they only have one certain amount of money that they get, who may not be able to afford prescription drugs or potential treatments where they were required to pay some out-of-pocket expenses, they may not be able to do that. So imagine someone having to choose between paying their rent, eating food, or paying for this drug that they need. Like, this is the kind of choices that we're making the American people have. Now, here's where the math comes in, and here's where I want to know, and 2018 is going to be the year that tells me whether I just need to retire from this like community organizing work that I do, because this is going to be the moment. Are people ready for 2018? Are you ready to take a stack and list of every single Republican who voted for this tax bill and ensure that they never see those halls of Congress ever again, that they are never going to get reelected no matter what? These people need to feel the consequences, and they are not feeling the consequences. And you're like, but what do you mean, Linda? Of course they don't feel the consequences, because if I know that I'm going to do something and there are consequences behind it, I might think twice or 3 times or 5 times about it. But when the Republicans don't think that there are consequences because we have such dismal voter turnout in this country. Okay, let's talk about that. We have 323 million people that live in this country. Did you guys hear what I just said? 323 million people who live in these United States of America. I get it. Not all of those people are Americans. I get it. We all, regardless of your immigration status, we all have a voice. We can all be heard. We can all protest. Our bodies are worthy. We can stand in a rally. We can stand in a member of the Senate's office. We all, even as people who may not have an American citizenship, we still have the opportunity to organize. So, but let's just say that there are 200 of the 323 million Americans, 200 million of us are registered voters. That's a lot of people. 200 million people. People were really impressed when 3.5 million people took to the streets of the United States of America on January 21st during the Women's March. So imagine that the Women's March happened. It's the largest single day protest in US history. Everyone's like, I'm so inspired. This is the best day of my life. Guess what? That was only 3.5 million people. We have 200 million registered voters in this country. Imagine if 200 million registered voters actually went to the polls and actually voted. The things I wanted you to keep your eye on, that this bill is going to go to the House and there's going to be reconciliation of these 2 bills. So there's still opportunities. Call your members of Congress, go to their offices, show up in Washington, D.C. Keep calling, keep emailing, keep calling. Tell your sister to call, tell your father to call, tell your son to call, whoever you need to do. Multiple phone calls every single day. You have to stay engaged. You have to. This bill is an absolute disaster. And if it passes, and I have a pretty bad feeling about it, it's a disaster for all of us and a majority of the American people. For God's sakes, people with private jets have tax breaks. I'm never going to get over that. Now, things to watch out for this week. The tax bill. Keep your eyes open. Keep calling your members of Congress. For those of you who care about undocumented people, and in particular undocumented young people, if members of Congress go away for the holidays without putting the DREAM Act as part of the budget bill, we're never going to see a DREAM Act. It's just never going to happen. I'm just telling you right now. March 5th, any child with DACA, their DACA is going to expire and they will become undocumented again. They will become undocumented again, and the government now has a whole database of all their names and all their information. So by extension, they and their families are at risk. So we need Congress to pass a clean DREAM Act, and we needed them to add it to the budget. Now, some Democrats are saying if the Republicans do not add the clean DREAM Act to the bill, they are not going to go home for the holidays, and they will keep the government. They will not allow the government. I mean, they will basically, if the bill doesn't pass, they'll be like a government shutdown type situation. Some Democrats are becoming a little wishy-washy because you know how Democrats are. They're not always loyal to us either. So we got to keep the pressure up. So I need you to call your member of Congress, Republican or Democrat, and say, look, you better be against this tax bill. And if you are, thank you. And I also need you to ensure that the Clean DREAM Act is going to be part of the budget bill before you go away from the holidays. That's what I want you to do. So look out for those 2 things and get your voice heard. These members of Congress, these senators, they work for you. And this is what I always tell people. Like, people say, Linda, like, why are you're so outspoken and you'll stand up to these people and you'll go out to a press conference and you'll say all these things. You know why? First of all, I got nothing to lose. That's the first thing. Second of all, why would I be afraid to talk to people who work for me? These members of Congress, they get paid with your taxpayer dollars. You technically are their employer. These members of the Senate, they get paid with your taxpayer dollars. Where do you think they get paid from? You think there's like a special fund somewhere? You pay for it out of your tax money. So you need to understand that when you're asking people to do something, you're not asking them for favors. You're asking them to do what you need them to do because they work for you. The more of us that call them and tell them what to do, the more they're going to do the right things. The more we don't call and they don't hear your voice, then they can just do whatever their donors tell them to do. And let's just be real here. When we think about the types of votes that they do on this tax bill, let's say how much did lobbyists put in their pockets? I'm talking about individually as senators. How much did he give you? $50,000, $100,000? Like, you threw away the American people for $100,000 donations or $150,000 donations? Like, is that what the American people are worth to you? Like, that's literally what they did. They literally threw us under the bus. Now, one thing that I want to make clear, because this is where it gets interesting. People were like, Corker, Senator Corker is a Republican and he's voting against the bill. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not going to take that away from folks, and I want people to celebrate that, but I want you to think about the psychology behind this. Senator Corker voted it out of the committee, and that's how it got to the Senate floor, so that there could be a general vote of all the senators. So if Senator Corker was such a hero, and he was so wonderful, all of a sudden now he's down with the American people, he would have never voted it out of committee. So don't let him do this, play with your mind like he's a hero. He did a protest vote at a time where his protest vote didn't actually matter. So it actually didn't matter to us if he voted for it or against it, because the Republicans already had all the votes that they needed to pass it. So don't let them play you like that, because that's what they do. They play mind games. I don't like it, because I'm awake. And I hope that you too, as they say, are woke, because they think we're not woke. The last thing that I'll say, and if anybody's from Alabama, or if you know anybody from Alabama, and I'm talking to you, Alabama, December 12th is a very important day. And we cannot allow Roy Moore to win that election. You cannot sit back and allow a man who molested children and has done a lot of other horrible things and has said a lot of racist things and has stood behind the things that he has said that are racist and sexist and misogynist to win his election. You just can't let it happen. So I'm asking you, if you know anybody in Alabama or you live in Alabama, that you vote against Roy Moore. Because your vote, if Roy Moore wins that election, it is a slap in the face for every courageous woman who has come out and spoken out against sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape. Literally. Like, we can set this movement back, and we cannot allow a sexual predator on December 12th in Alabama to win that race. So please, please, please vote against Roy Moore. When you vote against Roy Moore, you're sending a message to Donald Trump, who himself is a sexual predator and holds the highest office of this land. So sisters and brothers, we are in a very urgent situation. So urgent, like code red, code red. We need all hands on deck. I need you to pick up those phones. We have all these phones and all these gadgets, and everybody's trying to get an iPhone X or whatever the kind of iPhone's out right now. Well, then use those phones. Everybody has made things easy for you. Make5calls.com. Indivisible has some information out there. We have Move On has a whole slew of information and resources for you. There's so many organizations working against this tax bill. Follow these folks. Do what they tell you to do, and please, 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 please pay attention. Literally, if we do not do something, if you do not do something, I want you to know, and I want you to think about this really seriously. You are complicit in whatever's happening. I'm not going to blame this on Republicans anymore by themselves. I am not going to exclusively blame Republicans and people who voted for this bill. I'm going to blame my fellow Americans who had every opportunity to do something and that did not. And I want to be extremely humbled and grateful to all those who actually are waking up every day, adding their voice to this conversation, and doing whatever it is that needs to be done to ensure that we protect the most marginalized amongst us. The other thing I will say is, don't tell me anymore how the Republican Party is the party of family values and American values, or whatever the hell they say. When you are a party that is more obsessed with a fetus who's not even alive, who lives in who's like basically a group of cells. And I'm not saying, you know, that we shouldn't be caring about anything like that. But my point is, when you are obsessed with a fetus, but then you're willing for a live child who's running around in our parks or in our schools, or a senior or a person with disabilities to die because they don't have access to health care or medical care, or because they can't afford subscriptions, that is absolute hypocrisy. I do not believe the Republican Party represents Christian values or any religious values, because I believe that we are people of faith who believe in uplifting the most marginalized people, protecting the poor, ensuring that we all have just and equal access, that we all have access to the basic necessities of life, that we are called upon to feed our neighbors and feed the poor and the hungry and all this other stuff that we are taught, and they are definitely not practicing what they're preaching. So stay woke, stay involved. I don't know, again, what else has to happen, but I want you to stay engaged, because what just happened on your watch at 1 o'clock in the morning was probably one of the worst things that has happened to us in probably 50 years. Like, it's so outrageous, and I don't know why more people aren't as outraged as some of us are, but don't feel powerless. And just, again, 2018 is coming. The Women's March has a big announcement on January 21st. I know some folks want to march, and that's cool, and you know, we got to keep being out there in the public, but the Women's March National Office is deciding not to do an annual march or an anniversary march, that we have to put all of our resources, all of our attention on building political power and political momentum for 2018. We will be putting all our energy and resources behind progressives across this country. We are going to be visionary. We're going to be bold. We're going to put our money where our mouth is. And we hope that you join us in our effort when we announce to you our plans for this upcoming year. All of us, we need you all. So remember, those 200 million registered voters, you got to go to the polls. Listen, there would be no voter suppression. People say, you know, voter suppression laws, and some people say, Linda, I don't want to vote. I don't believe in the system. I get it. On a presidential level, it's hard to believe in it, but on a local level, it works. Listen, if voting didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to pass voter suppression laws across the country. They would not be trying to take the right of poor people away, of people of color away, of people who have been convicted and have done their time, coming out of prison and taking their right to engage in our democracy away. If it wasn't powerful, if it wasn't effective, if it wasn't impactful, guess what? They would make it as easy as possible. But they make it harder for people like us to vote, because they know that when people like us go to the polls, we vote collectively and we vote the right way. So please, please, please commit to registering everyone around you to vote. Be engaged. Make sure Alabama doesn't allow Roy Moore. If you're in a neighboring state, if you have to go work for Doug, who's running against Roy in the next week or so, make it to Alabama. Do what you need to do, but make sure that we do not let the sexual predator man win office. Stay woke, stay informed. I'll try to keep you informed, but read, follow groups like Indivisible, like Move On, like others who have a lot of great information and resources for you. So I appreciate you all. This authoritarian regime, don't be distracted by Michael Flynn. I'll tell you, whatever happens there is great, but what's more important is that we watch our Congress and watch the bills that are going to impact millions of Americans long after there is no Donald Trump. So hope to see you all soon.